Welcome to the 115th day of the Henry George Daily Devotional. We continue in Book 10, The Law of Human Progress, Chapter 4, the what may cause the decline, how modern civilization may decline. We are reading Progress and Poverty, an inquiry into the cause of industrial depressions and increase of want with increase of wealth, published in 1879 by Henry George. We're reading like a 1912 edition, I think, or something like that. Let's go. Now, the tendency in this direction is an increasing one. What direction is this? Probably towards corruption. Yeah, the tendency that we were just talking about was wealthy people could go break the law and just have to pay a fine and could keep on going. For instance, they could just kill somebody if it was a low-class person and they're a high-class person. Uh, I really don't have a clear opinion or perspective or firm opinion on how much violence high upper class wealthy people can get away with now. I don't know how you get a clear perspective on that. I feel like I'm so isolated. I only know my friends and the people in my class. And then you see the media. And the media will depict some celebrity misdeeds here and there, but it's hard to really get a sense of these things. I feel so uh, uncertain of how the world sort of works on a day-to-day level in much of the city, to be honest. It is shown in greatest force where the inequalities in the distribution of wealth are greatest, and it shows itself as they increase. If it be not a return to barbarism, what is it? The failures of justice to which I have alluded are only illustrative of the increasing debility of our legal machinery in every department. It is becoming common to hear men say that it would be better to revert to first principles and abolish law, for then in self-defense the people would form vigilance committees and take justice into their own hands. Is this indicative of advance or retrogression? All this is matter of common observation. Though we may not speak it openly, the general faith in republican institution is, where they have reached their fullest development, narrowing and weakening. Honestly, when I hear about all this, I just sort of feel like our low class is so racially segregated, um, and I'm not connected to really the Asian and Hispanic communities that strongly, that I'm not, um, aware of what they're saying. But I mean, they have huge gang problems, and sometimes I catch myself falling into thinking, oh yeah, so this isn't quite true. And maybe it's not that true of white people because all of the white people have had land and wealth for generations. There are still some poor white people. Um, where I live, Southern California, poor white people have left, um, and they've also become not poor because they've owned land here, and as more and more immigrants have come here, their land has gone up significantly in value. It is no longer that confident belief in republicanism as the source of national blessings that it once was. Thoughtful men are beginning to see its dangers. Yeah, and I've seen it in myself. There's just this sort of tacit um acceptance that immigrants' conditions, it's better than where they came from, so that's good enough. And, they're not really rightfully citizens here or something. Um, they should be happy as the immigrating generation. Maybe their kids will be better off. Well, the Hispanic population here in Southern California, they've been here a long, long time. There's always some new immigrants, but many have been generationally here longer than my family has been generational in the US. And it's pretty absurd to catch myself thinking those thoughts. But I honestly think the language barrier and the skin color, it becomes very easy for the upper middle class people to just sort of fall into this, oh yeah, that's just, it's mostly fair and it's trending and we're being generous by letting them come here, something like that. Uh, yeah. One of the things I would like to figure out is how to connect more with the Hispanic population with Georgism, because around here they are the working people. Anyway, thoughtful men are beginning to see its dangers without seeing how to without seeing how to escape them. Are beginning to accept the view of Macaulay and distrust of Jefferson. What does Macaulay? See Macaulay's letter to Randall, the biographer of Jefferson. And the people at large are becoming used to the growing corruption. And the most ominous political sign in the United States today is the growth of a sentiment which either doubts the existence of an honest man in public office or looks on him as a fool for not seizing his opportunities. That is to say, the people themselves are becoming corrupted. Thus, in the United States today is Republican government, running the course it must inevitably follow under conditions which cause the unequal distribution of wealth. Where that course leads is clear to whoever will think. As corruption becomes chronic, as public spirit is lost, as traditions of honor, virtue, and patriotism are weakened, as laws brought into contempt and reforms become hopeless, then in the festering mass will be generated volcanic forces, which shatter and rend when seeming accident gives them vent. Strong, unscrupulous men, rising up upon occasion, will become the exponents of blind popular desires or fierce popular passions, and dash aside forms that have lost their vitality. The sword will again be mightier than the pen, and in carnivals of destruction, brute force and wild frenzy will alternate with the lethargy of a declining civilization. I speak of the United States only because the United States is the most advanced of all the great nations. It's fun. It's like I always accept this because that's the society I was raised around saying, but it's funny to hear him saying this in 1879. Was that the widely held belief in 1879? I thought it was sort of the world wars that sort of let the USA leapfrog European development. I don't know. What shall we say of Europe, where dams of ancient law and custom pen up the swelling waters and standing armies weigh down the safety valves, though year by year the fires grow hotter underneath? Europe tends to republicanism under conditions that will not admit of true republicanism, under conditions that substitute for the calm and august figure of liberty the petrolus, and the guillotine. I don't remember this word. Petroluses, according to popular rumors at the time, female supporters of the Paris Commune. accused of burning down much of Paris during the last days of the Commune in May Day. The guillotine. Whence shall come the new barbarians? Go through the squalid quarters of great cities, and you may see even now their gathering hordes. How shall learning perish? Men will cease to read, and books will kindle fires, and be turned into cartridges. It is startling to think how slight the traces that would be left of our civilization did it pass through the throes which have accompanied the decline of every previous civilization. Paper will not last like parchment, nor are our most massive buildings and monuments to be compared in solidity with the rock-hewn templates and titanic edifices of the old civilization. This is even more true of digital storage. I think. It seems to me instructive to note how inadequate and utterly misleading would be the idea of our civilization which could be gained from the religious and funeral monuments of our time, which are all we have from which to gain our ideas of the buried civilization. I don't even, but like completely ruined civilizations that you have to dig up to learn about. I don't know if that has been a key factor in whatever greater levels of liberty and justice we have achieved. Actual, like, preserved, recorded thought, that I think 100% has. I mean, that's like recorded history has. But learning about, I don't know, ancient Babylon or ancient Israel, you know, preserving in that sense doesn't seem that it's very fascinating and interesting, but I don't actually find it super duper valuable in terms of enlightenment. So if we're considering how much of our society will last in the case of complete nuclear destruction or something, uh, other than things which people have intentionally tried to store, um, I don't think it makes a big difference. Maybe I'm wrong though, I guess, right? Finding a couple scrolls here and there was maybe significant. I'm not a historian. I'm gonna move on. Yet to hint today that our civilization may possibly be tending to decline seems like the wildness of pessimism. The special tendencies to which I have alluded are obvious to thinking men, but with the majority of thinking men, as with the great masses, the belief in substantial progress is yet deep and strong. I mean, you can simultaneously have the opinion that progress is continuing, yet there has been an inflection point hit, and there is a deeper rot. The brakes have been applied, and yet we're still going fast and still traveling forward. A fundamental belief, I mean, even after a car's tire blows, the car has its momentum. A fundamental belief which admits not the shadow of a doubt. And I think that's fair. I mean, we're still progressing, and you don't want to, like, you can't just lie, and time has borne that to be true. Since George's time, we have had further progress. But anyone who will think over the matter will see that this must necessarily be the case, where advance gradually passes into retrogression. Okay, yes. For in social development, as in everything else, motion tends to persist in straight lines. I thought he made exactly this point. And therefore, where there has been a previous advance, it is extremely difficult to recognize decline, even when it has fully commenced. There is an almost irresistible tendency to believe that the forward movement which has been advance, and is still going on, is still advance. The web of beliefs, customs, laws, institutions, and habits of thought, where each community is constantly spinning and which produces in the individual environed By it, all the differences of national character is never unraveled. That is to say, in the decline of civilization, communities do not go down by the same paths that they came up. For instance, the decline of civilization as manifested in government would not take us back from republicanism to constitutional monarchy and thence to the feudal system. It would take us to imperatorship and anarchy. As manifested in religion, it would not take us back into the faiths of our forefathers, into Protestantism or Catholicity, Catholicism, but into new forms of superstition, of which possibly Mormonism and other even grosser isms may give some vague idea. As manifested in knowledge, it would not take us toward Bacon, but toward the literati of China. And how the retrogression of civilization following a period of advance may be so gradual as to attract no attention at the time, nay, how that decline must necessarily by the great majority of men be mistaken for advance is easily seen. I just don't, I think technically I disagree here. Like, it is advance. For instance, there is an enormous difference between Grecian art of the classic period and that of the Lower Empire, yet the change was accompanied, or rather caused, by a change of taste. The artists who most quickly followed this change of taste were in their day regarded as the superior artists, and so of literature as it became more vapid, puerile, and stilted. And it would be in obedience to an altered taste, which would regard its increasing weakness as increasing strength and beauty. The really good writer would not find readers. He would be regarded as rude, dry, or dull. And so would the drama decline, not because there was a lack of good plays, but because the prevailing taste became more and more that of a less cultured class, who of course regard that which they most admire as the best of its kind. And so too of religion. The superstitions which a superstitious people will add to it will be regarded by them as improvements. While as the decline goes on, the return to barbarism, where it is not in itself regarded as an advance, will seem necessary to meet the exigencies of the times. Had a few thoughts, but then I got pretty distracted by just talking about whether or not good art will then be viewed as rude, dry, or dull. I forget what else I had to say about that. Oh yes, Albert J. Nock, a younger Georgist who became friends with George, published his memoirs in 1945. I'm reading through them. He talks about how the push for literacy was a big deal, and yet as everyone became literate, very few people could actually truly read in his terms. Reading in his terms meaning something like having a depth of understanding, being able to actually summarize what you read and recall it in some way. Um, and that by the influx of readership or literacy, you got tons and tons of terrible books, and also uh, it was sort of great and easy to get all of the really good books when he was young, because copyright law in the U.S. like didn't acknowledge Europe, I guess. And so he believes in copyright, and he's like, yeah, it was piracy, but it was great, but I guess it shouldn't be done. he doesn't really go on about it too much. He just sort of assumes that it was bad piracy. Um, and of course, George himself believed in a limited copyright, but he believed in the abolishing of patents. Knock refers to Gresham's law about good money driving out, or bad money driving out the good, and applies this to literature. My thoughts on that are mixed. Um, just like my thoughts on whether or not uh, we're really losing quality of art. I think a lot of art is fundamentally screwed up out of the sort of copyright uh, manipulation. Like it's art is done so that it might have an IP, so that you could sell, so you could have the rights to things. And if something happens to go viral, and that the virality predates the internet, of course. Um, but I'm not, this is not my strongest held belief, and I don't think that Georgism rises and falls or depends on having a super correct view of copyrightism. Um, but yeah, pop art does seem to crowd out good high art, and then due to the marketing spend, it this is super exacerbated, and so you get kind of the same like rule of the mob. You have the same sort of almost issues of direct democracy that you do have with commercial art. Um, Maybe I should refer to it as commercial art more often. And there's a weird parallel that I find that commercial art is perverted by, uh, you know, violence-backed monopoly rights, just like I think fundamentally violence-backed monopoly rights over land screw up our land use. All right, that's enough from me. Bye bye.